Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Mageti Rudrayatte Takshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So we'll begin today on verse 15. 45. But since we are meeting after 15 days, I thought it'll be good to, I'll quickly read just the translation of the earlier 4 verses, beginning with 41, just to refresh our memory. So in this path of yoga, the discerning knowledge is one-pointed. The thinking of the undiscerning is many-branched and endless. So what we are being told is that to practice karma yoga, any yoga for that matter, but here is specifically speaking about karma yoga, it's very important to have knowledge, but it's a discerning knowledge, because we know that there are a lot of people who are very knowledgeable but also very crooked at the same time. So it's not enough to simply have knowledge. That knowledge should be guided by discernment. And then he says it should be one-pointed. So that's an important requirement. Sometimes we think, oh, karma yoga is easy. Just do work, try to be unselfish, try to see God in all, and that's the easiest of all yogas. That may not be true. Because the requirement in order to do karma yoga well is, first of all, there should be discerning knowledge guided by a clear understanding, and the mind should be one-pointed. In verse 42, O Partha, those who rejoice in the karma-related words of the Vedas and assert that there is nothing else apart from heavenly rewards, who are filled with desire and seek heaven as their highest goal, such undiscerning people engage in the flowery talk about the various activities that seem to lead to enjoyment and power, but really to rebirth as a result of action. And then in verse 44, the unwavering knowledge does not arise in the minds of those who are devoted to enjoyment and power, and whose minds are carried away by various activities. So that's the background. Having pointed out the importance of being one-pointed and having discerning knowledge, and also pointed out it's possible for people to quote from the Vedas, which are the supreme text in the study of Vedanta. It's possible to quote from it to one's advantage. That there is the well-known phrase, devil quoting scriptures. So one, we have to be guarding against that, because a little bit of a smattering of knowledge about the Gita, a little bit of study about the Gita, unless we kind of understand even the Gita message well, it's possible to not consciously, but sometimes consciously, but oftentimes unconsciously misuse the teaching of the Gita. That our life, our actions, our thoughts are going in one way, and then the mind has a tendency to justify it, just to make one feel, oh, I'm doing the right thing. How am I doing the right thing? Oh, the Gita says so. And then it's good to kind of look and say, well, is that really what the Gita is saying? Or I'm kind of twisting the meaning of a particular verse to suit my own needs. And so that's important. And that's why now Krishna points out in verse 45, Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigунyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvandho Nityasatvastho Niryogakshema Atmavan. The Vedas deal with the 3 gunas, O Arjuna. Become free from the 3 gunas, free from all duality, and free from the idea of getting and keeping. Always remain filled with sattva and aware of the Atman. So there is a lot to unpack here. So when it is said the Vedas deal with the three gunas, and then very next line saying become free from the three gunas, it's an indirect way of saying the Vedas deal with the gunas, you have to go beyond gunas. In other words, you have to go beyond the Vedas. Now, Vedas, remember, is the supreme authority. That's where we turn to. Those are our guiding, that's our guiding light. And what does it mean, therefore, to say then, go beyond the Vedas? That this idea will come in the text that we are going to study today. It's good to keep at the back of the mind, and Swami Vivekananda refers to it as well, that among the religious texts, Vedas is one which very explicitly says that you have to go beyond the Vedas. It'll be difficult to find that kind of a statement in other texts. Because normally we kind of sometimes tend to take a book, it becomes like a kind of a book worship, and says, oh, this is the supreme authority. And the Vedas themselves say, go beyond us. Now then it leads to several questions. If you're to go beyond the Vedas, should we study the Vedas or not? What is their utility? And so on. There's one other place in the Vedas itself, I think Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is a passage which says, the knower, the enlightened one, stands on the head of the Vedas. Now we know in the tradition generally, everything that is sacred is put on the head. And that's why when we bow down in a temple before the altar, we touch our head to the ground. Because this is the way of showing respect. And so the head is always seen as the seat of knowledge, the seat where the divine resides, and so on. And in contrast, sometimes we see that feet that we use do a lot of work. Without feet, we wouldn't be able to walk anywhere. If someone has hurt their foot, they have to heal for months together. And so we know it's important. But in general, people, and especially in the Eastern traditions, in India especially, if your feet touch anything, especially some sacred objects, people say, oh, no, they'll do namaskaram, they'll do everything, and make sure that the feet don't touch. Even not just in the Hindu tradition, in many, when you're entering before, in a mosque also, people are expected to just wash their hands, wash their feet, and then go inside. And so there is this tradition that's come along. Now what this passage in the Upanishad says is, the knower, the one who has reached the highest, stands on top of the Vedas. The Vedas are the feet of that person. Now it might seem very sacrilegious to say something like that, but the purpose of saying that is that there is a state to go beyond the Vedas. The Vedas themselves say that to a person who is enlightened, tatra vedaha aveda bhavanti. The Vedas become non-Vedas to a person who is enlightened. You might remember that the example that Sri Ramakrishna gives, that sometimes when you have to do a considerable grocery, for instance, a lot of things to buy, and then you don't want to go all the way to the grocery shop and just get things from memory. Because then you come home and say, oh, I was supposed to get that, I totally forgot about it. And so generally what people do, careful people, usually as soon as they remember, I have to get this, they put a list. And so you have a list in your hand that these are the things I need to get. And that list is important. You don't want to lose that list. But then you go to the grocery shop, you buy the things that are there in the list. Then you don't come home and put that list on an altar and say, now I'm going to worship that list. The list has served its purpose. You don't need it anymore. You can simply throw it away. That's the attitude. That's what is meant by saying you have to go beyond the Vedas. Vedas have a tremendous utility. We need them. But once the purpose is served, if we still carry it on our head, then the Vedas themselves can become a burden. It's like if you are, say you have to cross a river, and there is this a small little rowboat there, and you need a boat. If the river is deep enough, you can't wade through it. A boat is useful, but then you go on the other bank, and then we say, okay, now I've reached the other bank. Now what will I do? This boat is so heavy. I have to kind of carry it on my head. You don't need to. What was the purpose of the boat? To take you across. And that's been done. If you now want to carry the boat beyond that, it's only going to be a burden. And that's what the Vedas mean when they say the purpose of the Vedas is to take us to that supreme truth, the supreme reality. Once that is reached, if we still cling to it, then it becomes a burden. That's the time to let it go. Now, that is what is meant by saying the Vedas deal with the three gunas. So, the gunas, we have seen it often, and it's going to come more often in the Gita as we go. What it simply means is this, that this creation, which is made up of matter, it's material, that matter has three tendencies or three attributes. So guna is also translated as qualities. Guna also means a rope in Sanskrit. And so we know that ropes are used to tie. So the gunas are qualities, but also people can get caught up in these gunas, which is what all of us are doing now, caught up in this material world. And so we are kind of bound by that rope of gunas. The gunas are three. Most of you are familiar with it: sattva, rajas, and tamas. And this will come again and again, so we'll go into detail later on. But enough to say that sattva, rajas, and tamas. Rajas is the principle of activity, action, passion. Tamas is the opposite of that. It's inactivity, inertia, and so on. And sattva is often seen as a kind of a balance between the two. That its nature is that of light, something that takes us towards the truth. And we won't go into that now, but you could remind yourself of the story Sri Ramakrishna said about the three thieves, the three robbers, and how he connects it with the three gunas. So I won't go into that story, but if you don't remember it, or if you would like to read it again, read it in the Gospel of Ramakrishna. It's very helpful to understand what functions the gunas play. So the Vedas deal with the three gunas. Yes, the Vedas deal with the highest reality, but we know that the grocery list is a list. You can't eat the grocery list. If your list says potatoes have to be brought and say, oh, I didn't have time to go and get potatoes, but this list says there's potatoes, let me eat the list. You're not going to. It's not like that. And so this is important. The Vedas tell us about that highest reality. It gives us information. It gives us a conceptual framework, concepts and ideas. The Vedas are like a finger pointing at the moon. Sometimes a little baby and you just look at the sky and say, where should I look? Say, oh, look, that's where the moon is. And it's helpful because then the child will know which direction to look. But what if the child doesn't look at the moon, keeps looking at my finger? And then I say, no. This is just to help you look at that moon. But I'm supposed to look at the moon. That is what the Vedas do. Vedas is like the finger pointing at the moon. The Vedas are helpful. Just as a finger pointing at the moon is helpful to know which direction I should look. But I should be trying to look at the moon. Simply looking at the finger is not going to help. And so that is what is meant by saying the Vedas deal with the three gunas. All ideas about God are helpful, but the ideas about God are not God. They are ideas. The picture of a mango is helpful. It reminds you of a real mango. But the picture of a mango is different from a mango, obviously. Exactly in the same way, scriptures contain ideas about God. Information, very helpful information, but it's still information. And that is what is meant by saying the Vedas deal with the three gunas. O Arjuna, become free from the three gunas. The goal is to go beyond ideas, beyond concepts. Concepts are helpful, but we have to go beyond them. The goal is to go onto the roof. And stairs are helpful, or an elevator is helpful. But the goal is to go to the roof. And once you reach the roof, you don't need the stairs anymore, unless you want to come down. But this roof is such that you said you wouldn't want to come down. And so that is what is meant by saying become free from the three gunas. Free from all duality. Because again, as long as we are in this polarized world, by polarized I mean everything is, there is a polarity here. Everything has this called pairs of opposites. If there is light, there is darkness. There is love, there is hatred. There is good, there is bad. The whole world has these opposites. And then go beyond all this duality. Go to a place. Normally we just think about go towards goodness, go towards light. And these are kind of images we read in the books. But philosophically, if you are aware of light, we would have no idea what light means unless we have some idea about darkness. And so, while it is customary to say God is good, God is love, and all of that, and in one level it does make sense, but philosophically, we see that the creation is filled with love and hatred. And if we identify God only with good and only with love and only with light, then we have this big problem about what to do with all the darkness and hatred, and then we have to find somebody else. And then, of course, we have to create a devil then, because if God is this, then all the rest of the things is a devil. And again, then we are again stuck in that duality. And so the God that the Gita teaches is not simply good, but is beyond good, beyond the duality of good and bad, beyond the duality of love and hatred. That is what the meaning of transcendent is. So free from all duality, and this is important, free from the idea of getting and keeping. Now that's the goal, that's the ideal. Now if you look at our life, yes, there are a lot of things, especially as spiritual seekers. Now we make an effort to say, oh, I must be detached. These are the things I shouldn't have. But we cannot deny that at some level, with different forms and different ways, there is this sense in us of getting and keeping. That's what is called yoga and kshema. Yoga means collecting, joining. Yoga is joining. And so getting things. If I don't have something, getting it would be yoga. Kshema means protecting it. And in a practical sense, that's what we all need to do. We need resources. We need things to maintain ourselves, our families, to live in this world. And so it makes sense to then make effort to acquire these things that are necessary for my upkeep, for my survival, for my living, and to protect them, protect my assets. And so that is what he says. But free from the idea of getting and keeping. Again, it's an ideal. We may not have reached that state yet. And we might say, is it ever possible to be free from that? Don't forget that before we reached our present state, there was a stage in our life when we were not worried about keeping and getting. When we were little babies, that time our parents worried about it. We never worried about it. We were just, in a way, if you want to know how an enlightened being will live, then in some kind of an idealized childhood is a kind of a enlightenment, you could say. Because you don't have to worry about the next day. You don't have to worry about anything. And there are other elders in the family who have to worry about it. They will pass sleepless nights. A little baby has no problem wondering, what shall I get my milk tomorrow? No, you don't never worry about it. But then, of course, we grow up, we expect to stand on our own feet, take care of ourselves, and then, of course, this getting and keeping becomes necessary. What the Gita will point out, and what many scriptures point out, is yes, physically we have grown. Physically we are no longer babies. It doesn't make sense to be forever dependent on others. True. We don't have to be dependent on other human beings. We want to be independent. But as spiritual seekers, if we see that beyond our connections in this world, we have these higher connections, so to speak. If we think about, spiritually speaking, I'm still a little baby. I'm still a little child. And God is my father. God is my mother. So I already know what it means to be a baby. I was a baby once, and I didn't worry about anything. So if I truly, and that truly word is important, at present we all kind of agree, God is my father, God is my mother, but still, God the Father, God the Mother may not sometimes be as real as the father and mother I may have at home. Because they are so tangible being. I know this is my mother, this is my father. But God the Father kind of seems a little bit distant, seems a little bit away. It's a good feeling. But we don't live only on feelings. We want something more real. But again, a time will come, that is what we aspire for, when God the Father, God the Mother, when Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, or whichever way we think of the divine, they no more remain simply an idea in our head. They no more remain as something that we just go to when we stand before an altar. Not simply pictures or images, but as real, if not more real, than the people we see around us. When that happens, it will happen. When that will happen, then this idea of getting and keeping will go. That doesn't mean I'll stop working. I'll keep on doing what I'm doing. But knowing fully well that God the Mother, the Divine Mother, is taking care of me. I will not worry about it. Now, not worrying is different from not working. So we will continue to do the work in a much better way, free from all constraints, free from all anxiety, because we know I don't have to worry about it. My mother is taking care of me. So that's the ideal. Free, that's what Krishna is asking Arjuna to do. That go beyond the three gunas, go be free from duality, free from the idea of getting and keeping, and always remain filled with sattva. What does remaining filled with sattva means? Holding on to dharma. Living truthfully, living honestly, living with some principles and values. The more I live with some values in life, some principles in life. If I look in my heart and say, do I have any principles? I don't know what principles I have. Then there is a problem. We have to have, and that could vary from person to person, but we must have something in our lives to say, that's something that is sacred to me. That's a principle I'm never going to compromise with. Is my life just a collection of compromises I make? Or is there anything in my life I'm going to say, other things I can be flexible, but these are the things I'm not going to be. This is the rock on which the edifice of my life is built. Do I have any such thing? And one way that the Gita and the other texts mention is the idea of dharma, living truthfully, honestly, with love in the heart, no hatred, be kind, not hurting anyone. If I can live by these principles, then I will remain filled with sattva. And then finally, aware of the Atman. Being aware of the Atman, Atman, as I have mentioned earlier, literal meaning of the Atman is simply the self. So aware of the Atman can mean be aware of the self, both lower and higher. By lower and higher, I mean this. Right now, we have an idea of the self. It might not be that highest self, or one with the infinite, etc. Our present idea of self is I'm still finite, I'm still mortal, I still have problems, but that's what my self is right now. And then when we read in the Gita, my real self is birthless and deathless, is immortal and so on. So right now we are kind of dealing with two selves. My present self as I experience now, and which most of the time appears very real to me. But when we read the text and say, no, the real self, the real me was never born, will never die. Weapons cannot cut me, and so on. All the description we find in the earlier part of the second chapter. Now we have to be aware of both. Yes, being aware of the, you see, always being thinking, oh, I'm the infinite one, that's great. But it's not simply an intellectual process. And so while we keep intellectually aware of the real self, it's also helpful to have some knowledge of this unreal self. Because this lower self-knowledge is very important if we want to progress in spiritual life. To reach the real I must have a better understanding of the unreal I. Now, what do I mean by that? It's simple. That me right now, as a human being, I should be able to look in my heart and kind of have a self-assessment. People are judgmental. That's people judge. And we are pretty good at judging other people. We have ideas about other people. Oh, this person is like this, that person is like that. These are the good qualities of this person. These are the terrible qualities of that person. We do that all the time, consciously or unconsciously. Now, we need to use that ability to judge others, to say, but just like these people exist on this planet, this person, pointing at myself, everyone should say, I'm also one of the people existing on this planet. And just as I judge these other people on the planet, can I judge this person on the planet? Now, not very easy to do. People who are extremely self-centered, people who have a very strong ego, very egoistic people, are terrible at self-assessment. They won't be able to do it because self-assessment requires, it's like looking at an object. It's like this. If I have to look at what this object is, it has to be some distance away from me. If it's like, now look at this object, I can't see it. I can't even see it. If it's too close, I can't see it. Now to see this, either I have to put this out, or if this is where it is going to be, then I have to at least metaphorically come out here and then see it. So now this my unreal self is a little bit like this. It's inside. And so while we can judge other people because they are objects, it's difficult to judge me because I'm not, it's possible to make me an object. And therefore, if I have a good and imaginative mind, then can I kind of come out of myself and look at myself the way other people would be seeing me? And that's why I said, egoistic people, they find it very difficult to come out of themselves. There has to be a little bit of a loosening up of the ego, even mentally, kind of a thought experiment to kind of come out and look at this person and then say, let me judge who this person is. And if we are able to do it fairly well, we will see that just as people around us have good qualities and weaknesses, We too have good qualities and weaknesses. Now, if I can correctly identify what strengths I have and what weaknesses I have, that's kind of knowing the unreal self. That's very helpful. Because then going forward, because a lot of time we have wonder about what shall I do? I don't know what to do. Well, now I know what to do. I know what my strengths are. I know what my weaknesses are. So what I need to do, whatever I do in my life, whatever thoughts I think, everything that I do, I should make sure that what strengths I have, I preserve it. I don't lose it. Nothing is permanent. I can lose my strengths, my good qualities, if I don't consciously preserve it. We thought about getting and keeping. Instead of getting and keeping in terms of material things, let me think about getting and keeping about these qualities. So if I'm aware, and clearly, every one of us, nobody can say, oh, I don't have any good qualities. Nobody really says that. But but sometimes we might have difficulty finding, oh, I don't have any problem. I'm just fine. No, I'm not fine. If I were totally fine, I would be an enlightened being. If I'm not enlightened, that means there are certain weaknesses. There are certain things I need to work on. And therefore, and then we also have good qualities, strengths. Through all the work that we have done in our earlier life, even in this life, yes, we have worked hard. The way we relate to others, the way we do our work, any kind of weakness, even physical weakness, emotional weakness, intellectual weakness, any kind of a weakness. Swami Vivekananda famously said, strength is life, weakness is death. And so if I'm able to see certain weaknesses or drawbacks in me, I have to say, what should I do? How can I make an intelligent modification in my way of thinking, doing, speaking, and so on, that this weakness that I have will go away? And then sometimes we might be overwhelmed. Oh, I've got so many weaknesses. What shall I start with? It's like if my room is in a mess, and then we decide, oh, there is so much to do, and then we keep on postponing it, but there is so much to do. Because then you say, I don't know where to begin. Well, begin with something. Even if every day, if my room is in a mess, if every day I say, I'm just going to take one thing and put it in the right place, there's a better chance that over some days, depending on how messy the room is, eventually it'll be all right. But I have to begin somewhere. I can't be just worried and saying, oh, it's going to take a long time, so I'll do it next year. That won't work. And that's what you have to do with the mess inside as well. Yes, you might find a lot of things that need attention, but I must begin somewhere with something. In fact, these books say that even if I decide to eliminate one weakness per year, one weakness in a year, and that's a pretty generous time frame, we'll find a good improvement, a real transformation. And I'm sure many of the weaknesses may not have to wait for one full year to get rid of it. But we have to start somewhere. That's the only way. So spiritual progress is not to be measured simply with how many visions I've had, how many hours I meditate. Because sometimes those are very flimsy ways of doing it. And oftentimes we don't get very accurate picture about that. The real test is, just like nowadays, if you install any software, you have to update it frequently. Whenever a new update comes, do it, because they are squashing all the bugs in it. If you don't do it, it could cause a security risk. Now, this software which is inside also needs updating, needs upgrading. And if you're not doing it, then we might think, oh, I've been now studying this, reading this, meditating, praying for so long, and nothing has happened. Well, now I haven't done the updates. And the only way to do that is, as Krishna says, be aware of the self. And that's what I wanted to say, that be aware first of the lower self. Be aware of who I am right now. Yes, when I become enlightened, the books are telling us what will happen when I become enlightened. But right now, in my unenlightened state, who am I as a person? And what should I do to eliminate these weaknesses? That is what is meant by saying in the verse, he says, Atmavan, be aware of the Atma, be aware of the self. So let me read that verse again, verse 45. The Vedas deal with the three gunas, O Arjuna. Become free from the three gunas, free from all duality, and free from the idea of getting and keeping. Always remain filled with sattva and aware of the Atman. Now, what has been said earlier about go beyond the Vedas, because Vedas deal with three gunas, you have to go beyond the three gunas, you have to go beyond the Vedas. So, are the Vedas useless? How do we understand our relationship with the Vedas? And that discussed in the next verse, verse 46. Yavanartha udapane sarvatas samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. To the wise person who has known the Atman, the Vedas have as much value as a pond has when there is water flooding everywhere. So here is an image that if the source of my source of water is a pond or a small little reservoir or a well outside my home, and that's where I get my water from, I need it. It's useful for me. We all need water. But what happens if there's a lot of rain and there is water everywhere? There's a big flood. Then I can't say, oh, what shall I do now? I don't have access to the pond. I don't even know where the pond is now because there is water everywhere. And the idea is the purpose that water in the pond was serving, now that purpose is included. You've got water everywhere. In the same way that Vedas are useful. But a person who has known the Atman, who has become enlightened, that person has knowledge everywhere. So what that enlightened being gains has so much more that the knowledge of the Gita, knowledge of the Vedas is included in that. So just as the pond becomes useless when there is a much larger body of water, the Vedas become useless when I go beyond the Vedas. And that's what I mentioned earlier about Tatra Vedaha Aveda Bhavanti. The Vedas become non-Vedas. So the Vedas don't become non-Vedas in my present ignorant stage. When the pond is the only source of water, I need the pond. And it will be no longer needed only when there is a larger body of water. So that's the idea here. Again, it's kind of a balancing because the earlier verse seemed to suggest you have to go beyond the Vedas. And we might say, if to go beyond the Vedas, then why bother with it? And the idea is, no, you read it, but there will be a time when you will not need it anymore. So let me read the next verse. It's a verse that is very well known. It's quoted very often. And I'll touch it very briefly, but if you have more questions, we can deal with it now and then maybe continue next week. So verse 47. Karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalaheturbhur ma te sangostva karmani. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have fitness for only work, but never seek its fruits. Don't become the cause of fruits of your work, nor be attached to inaction. Karmani eva adhikaraha te. Te means tava, you. You have fitness, adhikara, fitness for work. There are what it simply means is, you remember earlier, and then actually a question Arjuna will ask later in the beginning of the third chapter. Because what Krishna has done and will be doing, first he speaks about the knowledge of the Atman. How wonderful it is to know that you are this infinite Atman. And now he is telling Arjuna, you have fitness for work. And work really, the immediate work before Arjuna now is to fight this battle, which he doesn't want to do. And so Arjuna's question, which he will ask in the beginning of the next chapter is, if I'm the infinite Atman, if I am birthless and deathless, that is what I should be thinking about. That knowledge is what I need. And you're asking me now to fight this battle? Why should I be doing this? It's just these three gunas. It's just this material thing. Why should I do this highest? And Krishna is, it doesn't sound so blunt here. Karmani eva adhikaraste. Eva means only. I don't know what Arjuna must have felt when told like this. What Krishna is telling Arjuna is, right now, you have only fitness for work. In other words, to be able to do something and benefit from it, fitness is important. It's not enough to say, oh, running a marathon is such a wonderful thing, and if you win, then you become so famous that I'm going to run marathon this time. But that's fine. It's wonderful. But am I fit right now? I have to work hard. I have to work hard to make myself fit. So if getting that knowledge is like running for the marathon, and what Krishna is telling Arjuna now is, right now, you are not fit to run the marathon. Right now, start practicing. And that is what he meant by saying, right now you are fit for work. The next, ma phaleshu kadachana. It's possible. Now that's the tricky part. And that's where Maya comes in. That's where we are kind of caught up in the three gunas. If I do something, I want to see the results. What's the point of doing if I do something and nothing comes of it? And so doing action and seeking the results of action is our system is so inbuilt to think about it that way. And so what Krishna is telling Arjuna is, you're fit for work, that's what you can do. Now, what are the things that needed to do any action? The things that are needed for any action is, first, a sense of I. If there is no I, you cannot do any work. Which is why, in deep sleep, no work is possible. We don't have any sense of I, no work is possible. The second thing required in order to do any action is, this I, which is there, must have some need or must have some desire to fulfill. Otherwise, why should this I do anything at all? And in a larger sense, what the Vedantic way of thinking is that the creation of I, the sense of I, or the birth of I comes alongside a sense of lacking. The two go together. See, in deep sleep, when the I is absent, we don't lack anything. We don't have any wants, no desires, nothing. No stress, no anxiety, nothing. You just fill. But as soon as you wake up in the morning, I become aware, then I've got to do this, I've got to do that. All these things comes in. So, very briefly, we won't be able to do this whole verse today, but just to mention one thing, and then we will have time for asking questions. The idea of Brahman as this infinite reality, In that infinite oneness, there is no sense of I. I said earlier that the world is, there is polarity there. If there is good, there is bad. There is light, there is darkness. There is love, there is hatred. If there is I, then has to be something not I. I cannot simply exist on its own because it's polarized. So once that infinite oneness without any divisions, the first crack in it, the first division occurs, this I. As soon as that I comes, the not I comes up also. And it's simple. I mean, it's so, it just feels, it's instantaneous. The moment I know this is I, whether I say it aloud or not, everything other than this is not me. Just that's what the world is. I mean, what is the world? Anything that I see which I don't identify as me is the world. So, me as the subject who perceives, and anything that is not me is the world. So, the idea of I comes alongside the idea of not I. Now, just think about it this way. This, first of all, this not I is a way bigger than I. The world is much, much huge. Who am I? Just nothing. And so, before this division occurred, before this rupture occurred, I was this infinite being. And now suddenly, something happened, and I've suddenly become this little thing. It's like you were living in a huge palace, and suddenly you found you are in this one small little room staying. It's going to be terrible. And you have a kind of a vague memory of living in that big palace. And then you will have to want to say, I'm in this small little room now. I need some more space. I need a little bigger place. So the need or a desire comes when I contract. I become smaller. And so this infinite reality now has become this little me, and suddenly finds, oh, I don't have this, I need this, I lack this, I lack that. And so desire automatically comes in. And that's what he means by saying, you have the fitness for work, but never seek its fruits. Because when we work, there is always some motivation for work. And the motivation is, this work must yield some result. So we will see next week, we'll go deeper into this verse, what it means, what does fitness for work mean, why I should never seek its fruits, what will happen if I become the cause of more karmafal, more fruits of work, and why I should not then say, oh, this karma is so much problem, I better stop working. And Krishna says, no, you can't do that either. You have to work, but to work intelligently. And what that working intelligently, working wisely, is what karma yoga is. Working like a fool is karma roga. It's a disease. Being workaholic is not the same as being karma yoga. So simply doing a lot of work doesn't make us any yogis. It exhausts us. It tires us. We get burnt out. But if I work intelligently, then the same work which can done wrongly can create so much bondage, the same work can free me. So the path beyond work is through work. The path beyond the ego is working through the ego, purifying it and going beyond it. So we'll discuss this more when we meet next week. But if you have any thoughts, ideas, questions.
Namaskar, Swamiji. Swamiji, my question is on the working intelligently aspect. So sometimes I kind of struggle to pace myself when I'm working. So is like when we say work intelligently, is it that you have to kind of pace yourself? Because I find that especially post COVID, like 9 to 5, people just put meetings on your calendars constantly, and then you're just context switching, and then the entire day is gone, and you've barely thought about God or barely thought about the mantra, and it's exhausting. Whereas some days when I have it kind of paced out, so do we need to plan our days such that we kind of block out chunks of time, if possible, where we can kind of almost be little, is just like, what is there like an ideal amount of time that a person can work and then they need to step away?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is one definitive answer to that. I think different things might work for different people. It's a little bit like, suppose, now oftentimes we have to be at work and maybe there's a little child at home, or there are families or some elderly people at home, and we have concern about it. So, or we don't want to get so absorbed in work as to forget about them. And so sometimes people have, even at their work desk, sometimes the picture of something that is dear to them. So now and then they say, just looking at the picture kind of just brings them, when they're thinking about the family, about their parents, about their children, then looking at the picture can help. Sometimes some people might say, oh, can I just quickly just say hello, just call them and say hello. There are any number of ways we could do it. Now, same thing that people can do while remembering about their family and other things, a spiritual seeker can do the same thing with regard to one's own Ishta. Sometimes having a picture or a symbol, or if one doesn't want that, or if you're working in office space, sometimes you don't want to be, some people are hesitant to display their religiosity externally. Well, you can keep it in your pocket or something. But that's one way. Or if it's possible to have bigger gaps, maybe stop for a couple of minutes or 5 minutes and just say your mantra silently. Just again, I think everyone's situation is so different, but we have to find some constructive ways of remaining connected even when we are busy with things. Yeah, I mean, you see, it's like this. When sometimes if there is certain thing bothering us, then we don't stop working. We still need to go to the work office next day. We still have to do it. But if something is bothering me, even when I'm doing the other work, I never really forget whatever it is that is bothering me. That is somewhere at the back of the mind. Or similarly, if someone is in deep love, then again, no matter what I do, I still have to go to work, I still have to do things, but then I'll always be thinking about the object of my love, even when I'm doing other things which may not be connected with that object at all. Exactly in the same way, if the more my Ishta, my spiritual life, my spiritual ideal becomes more real, more urgent, more important to me, then it'll remain at the back of the mind no matter what I'm doing. Yeah, so therefore we just have to find creative ways to remain connected with the ideal. Yeah.
Swamiji, just correct me if I'm wrong, it just came to my mind. I, or lower self, is a product of ignorance or Maya. Then how I bring my lower self to higher level? Or should I just prepare myself to be fit to be a spiritual path?
No, the lower self, yes, you see, there is only one self. The real self is all that exists. So the lower self is nothing but the real self who has forgotten my true nature. So it doesn't as if there are two selves, an unreal self and real self. It's just like rope and a snake are not two objects. It's just one object. Because I'm not seeing the rope, I'm seeing the snake. I cannot see both at the same time. So similarly, the real self and unreal self are not two different things. It's the real self, like the rope, has gotten covered by the unreal self. So I need to first understand that unreal self well, try to sort of purify it a little bit or make it stronger so that it will become transparent enough and I'll see the real self underneath it. So it's good to kind of keep that at the back of the mind. Okay. Yeah.
Good evening, Swamiji. Swamiji, my question is about the ideal of having a single focus in spiritual life. I've been thinking a lot about this in the last few months. I'm confused. If I look back on my life, the quality of curiosity has been a benefit to me in that it's led me to things that have enhanced my life, including spiritual life. And so I've always seen it as a positive. And similarly, a motivation to be helpful. I've always looked at that as a positive quality, but as I go further in my spiritual life, I sometimes think that my curiosity and desire to use my energy in a lot of different ways is actually in some ways becoming a liability, because then I don't spend the time perhaps that I should on cultivating this single focus. And so I just wondered if you would offer, like, how do we discriminate if that motivation inside us is coming from God telling us to do something or to learn something, or is it to be more single-focused in a meditative state? Just how we might discriminate better around that.
Yeah, okay. Then that's a very good question. The being curious is always helpful because all knowledge, all growth comes through curiosity, the desire to know, the desire to understand. And so curiosity is a good thing. But we should also temper that curiosity with discernment. That yes, I'm curious about something, and I start expending some time and energy getting to know that thing. But very quickly, I should have enough discernment to say, whatever time and energy I'm investing into it, is it just to satisfy my curiosity, or it is somehow in alignment, in harmony with what is really important to me in life. So we could be curious about many things, but so long as they don't hinder my progress in a direction in which I want to go, I think that's fine. But if I'm curious about something which is in this direction, and that's where I want to go, then I have to say, well, no matter how interesting that is, it's going to delay then where I want to go. So I think curiosity is good, but we have to practice discernment about which curiosity is something that will help me in the direction I want my life to go, and which kind of curiosity will be kind of a detour which is going to delay my main focus in life. Because there are several things which could be actually helpful. It's like I'm going here and there could be something which, I can be curious about it, it takes me there and sometimes in some way enriches my life, perhaps helps me in my journey and speeds it up, possible. But there could be other kinds of curiosities which might be very interesting, but which need not necessarily help me in the primary purpose of my life. So we have to practice that discernment about that one. Yeah, Mahendra.
So, Swamiji, the verse 44 and 45 where Krishna and you explain in a lot of detail, but I just wanted to kind of understand my interpretation of what you said, is that he said that the flowery language of the Vedas and just don't
Not
get...
flowery language of the Veda. Flowery language of the people who try to explain the Vedas.
Vedas.
Yeah.
So, in other words, it's the Vedas are an experience of the rishis who kind of like saw that. So, for us to kind of like ignore completely for the people who are explaining to us and try to experience what it is, how do you then go about that experiencing the coming out of the dualities, or not trying to be sort
Yeah.
of
So it's good to keep in mind, a lot of times, I've used the word Vedas so often, and we speak about Vedas being supreme. Most of us, especially those of us who come to the Vedanta Society, we mostly, when we think about the Vedas, we think about the Upanishads. And many of us haven't even studied all the Upanishads, maybe some of the Upanishads. So just to have some idea about it, the Upanishads quantitatively is actually a very small portion of the Vedas. Most of the Vedas, now I don't want to put a number there because I haven't studied the entire Vedas myself, but it's really a huge, maybe definitely more than 90%, or perhaps even 95% of the Vedas is not about the Upanishadic philosophy directly. Most of the Vedas really is about karma. Most of the Vedas is about you do this and you get this result. You do this. So if we judge what the book is saying by just the amount of pages devoted to it, then we'll probably get a very wrong idea. Because normally we tend to think that, for instance, this is a very crude analogy. I read that until 1960s or 70s, for medical students, among the several thousand pages that all the different medical texts they had to study, there were only, until the 1960s or 70s, there were only 20 pages for pain management. It was not considered a topic important enough to be devoted to. It's only in the last 50, 60 years that people think, no, that's something that needs more attention. And a lot more studies have been done, a lot more time and research has been done about pain management. And so it's possible that sometimes just because something has a very little coverage, we might think it's not important. And some people do. In fact, some of these karma kandis, they do think that, if karma is not that important, and nobody's really saying karma is not important, but the majority of the Vedas really deal with karma and its effect, karma and its result. So we can't blame unthinking people for thinking Vedas is all about rituals, all about karma, because that's what it is most of the time. And of course, if that's what somebody thinks, and that's clearly a misunderstanding, that's not how the Vedas are seen, those people will say, oh, if you do this karma, you'll go to heaven, you'll live there, you'll get a very beautiful, and they don't speak about angels, etc. in Vedas, but kind of all the heavenly beauties and advantages and health and joy and so on. And that seems like a much more attractive thing to work for than just being this infinite thing. It's like, oh, what? It's pretty abstract for most people. And therefore, this flowery language, so to speak, that people who then have misunderstood the real import of the Vedas can say, this is what the Vedas can do this ritual, and then you will get this infinite. And what the Upanishad philosophically will say, no, wait a minute. There is a simple principle in the Vedas which says, yat kritakam tad anityam. That is, anything that is a result of action is necessarily not permanent. And simple thing is, the effect and the cause, they are related to each other. You simply say it reminds us of Newton's third law. Actions and reactions are equal and opposite. So if the cause is finite, the effect will be finite also. And that's one of the problems with thinking, I do some amount of good work here, I become charitable and do all this, and then eternally I go and live in heaven. They say, no, wait a minute. You have done a finite amount of good. Yes, you have done a lot of good, but it's still a finite quantity. So that finite quantity of good cannot give you like infinite stay in heaven. That will also be. Besides, of course, if heaven is a place, it cannot be infinite. If it's a place, then it is boundary, it has boundaries, it is finite, and so on. So, but that insight the Upanishads will give. And then there is the tendency then to think, oh, if it's all useless, then why do any work? Which is why then Krishna will say, which we'll discuss next week, is no. Work is important. And we will see. Again, I don't want to start a discussion on that right now. But that's the kind of a dilemma we have. There's a lot of discussion about work and ritual. And so we have to understand clearly what role work has in our life, what role ritual has in our life, how it can be done in a way that it will give me the results the Upanishads promise, that I don't get stuck in it. And people who don't express it that way, that is the flowery language. Flowery, it's like sweet talk. People, it's like you tell someone what they like to hear, but there is no truth in it. To give a more contemporary example, that's what people say in their campaign speeches. Once they get elected, again, so the flowery talk and not afterwards. It's a little bit like that. So we will stop here now, and we'll continue. Next week we will once again take a deeper look at verse 47. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu.